Shalom, this is Rob with TelosTorah and Rob on the Rock. I want to do just a short lesson from the Torah portion this week, which is Toldot, which extends from Genesis 25 into Genesis 28. I want to look at here at the very end of Genesis chapter 26. It might be a passage that gets, kind of, we read through it quickly and you kind of move on. But I want to look at these two verses here. Genesis 26, 34 and 35. And it says, Vahi Esav ben Arbaim Shana. And Esau was 40 years old. Vayikach Isha. And he took a wife. Now, if we remember earlier in our Torah portion in chapter 25, we learned that Isaac was ben Arbaim Shana when he took Rebekah as a wife. So Isaac married Rebekah when he was 40 years old. And perhaps we could say, well, why are we told that Esau was 40 years old? It's almost the same phrasing. Vahi Esav ben Arbaim Shana vayikach Isha. He took a wife, and it's actually two, et Yehudit bat Be'eri Hachiti. That is Yehudit, the daughter of Beri the Hittite, and Ve'et Basmat bat Elon HaChiti. And Basmat was his second wife, daughter of Elon HaChiti. So two Hittites here are mentioned, two men, and the daughters of these two men became wives of Esau. So he did not go find a wife from Padan Aram. Remember what Abraham told his servant way back in Genesis 24. Don't take a daughter for my son in this land. And we know so that Isaac married Rebekah, of course. And what do we see here at the very end of Genesis 26, verse 35? Vatihiena morat ruach leYitzchak uleRivka. And they were, so this verb vatihiena is referring to the two women, the two daughters of the Hittites. They were morat ruach. They were bitterness of spirit. They were bitterness of spirit for Isaac and for Rebekah. So what does this mean? How are we to understand this? If he's 40 years old, so he was the same age. And my thought is this. I'll give you my thought. My thought is that Esau wants to impress his dad. He's 40 years old, and he knows that it was when his dad, Isaac, was 40 that he married his mom, Rebekah. And he thought, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to get married when I'm 40, like my dad. I think that's why this is for us, to recognize this kind of earthly motivated behavior that Esau is undertaking. And he took two women who were daughters of Hittites, which was not from the Padan Aram, not from the right people. And why does that matter? Because we're going to talk about a completely different culture, completely different religious worldview. We're talking about who knows what kind of practices that these girls were raised in, and definitely not knowledgeable of the God of Israel, of creation, etc. And we see this in 35. It wasn't that these two women only brought bitterness of ruach, bitterness of spirit to Isaac, or only to Rebekah, but to both Esau's parents as individuals. These women brought the bitterness, morat ruach, bitterness of spirit to them, which tells us something here about, the word ruach is here. Esau did not know how to read the room, so to speak. Esau did not have on his radar the spiritual things. He didn't understand that these marriages that he took for himself when he was 40, he didn't consider the larger family social ramifications of these relationships. And he wasn't apparently it wasn't on his mind, or he didn't have any sensitivity to the cost that these two women brought with their pagan behavior into the lives of his parents, Isaac and Rebekah. Now, this we see as we continue in chapter 27 that Isaac still plans to bless Esau as his firstborn, and still says, go, prepare the game that I like, and I will bless you before I die, etc. And we know, though, that Rebekah loved Jacob, and Rebekah had carried this prophecy that the older would serve the younger, right? And we know that all the way back from chapter 25. So Rebekah knows from the Lord directly that Esau will serve Jacob, and that Jacob is the one who will carry the covenant forward. And of course, she takes charge in that matter and assures Jacob, yes, you need to do A, B, and C. You need to do these things. And even though Jacob protested, and he's like, wait a minute, I can't do this. I don't want to lie. Rebekah said, let it be on my shoulders. You need to do this. And of course, we know what happens in the subsequent chapter. So this morat ruach, this bitterness of spirit, the King James says grief of mind. And that's okay, grief of mind. But it's bitterness of spirit, I think, hits home for me more. Because first of all, ruach is kind of a deeper sense of mind. These women disturbed both Isaac and Rebekah. That means whenever they were together, you have Isaac and Rebekah together, and let's say, Esau is visiting with his two wives, and then they leave. That means Isaac and Rebekah are looking at each other and saying, oh my goodness, can you believe this? I mean, the Torah doesn't tell us, but it's not hard to imagine what Isaac and Rebekah talked about when Esau left. And they're like, what has our son done? These women are getting him to think about the wrong kinds of things. Of course, we know Esau is very earthly minded. But, I'm a lot of speculation here. But basically, I think that the reason we're told that Esau was 40 when he took a wife is because he's trying to be like his dad. He's trying to be a man from an earthly sense. God is not involved in, Esau as in terms of him seeking God, seeking the kingdom, trying to learn God's ways, trying to seek wisdom from his parents. Certainly, he hasn't done any of those things. Otherwise, he wouldn't end up with these two Hittite wives that bring grief of mind or bitterness of ruach, bitterness of spirit, to Isaac and Rebekah. He was a man of the earth. He was earthly minded, Esau was. And Jacob, heavenly minded. And it doesn't mean Jacob had wisdom. Jacob still has to learn wisdom. He still has to learn like we all do. But at least Jacob, we know, seeks God. And we see that through the rest of the story of Genesis, basically, which is from now until Jacob's death in Egypt. And of course, Jacob has much heartbreak in his life, even though Jacob is a man of God and he is the third name in the name of the God of Israel. I am the God of Abraham. I am the God of Jacob, or Isaac. I am the God of Jacob. The creator of the universe calls himself Jacob's God. Isn't that wonderful? He calls himself Jacob's God. Not God of Esau, but Jacob's God. And of course, Jacob, as we know, in next week's Torah portion, will receive a new name from God. And he will be called Israel. All right, just a little short focus on these last two verses of Genesis 26. Why was Esau 40 when he took these wives? Why did he take two Hittite wives? And what was it about these women that brought this bitterness of spirit to both his parents, Isaac and Rebekah? This passage is in the Word of God. It's in the Torah for us to pause and read and consider. And I've done a little bit of reflection on what that might be. All right, everybody. Shalom to you. And I hope you have a blessed Shabbat. Bye-bye.